Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's episode, we're going to cover a rather interesting subject, a subject that very few people are even aware of that exists. Specifically, this flag that you're looking at now. There's probably just a handful of folks who are watching the program right now who knows or who is aware of where this flag comes from. Now, this episode is probably going to offend a few people. Now, as I always say, you have a right to be offended. You have that right. You can do that. You can disagree. We can agree to disagree. Now, where is this flag from? Well, this flag is from a town, a very new town in South Africa called Orania. It is spelled O-R-A-N-I-A, Orania. And I hope I'm saying that right. And I have no doubt that I could be mispronouncing it. Orania. Now, very interesting flag. Orange, blue, a young boy rolling up his sleeves. Why is he rolling up his sleeves? Well, he's probably looking to do some sort of work. He's there to build something. Can we agree on that? Okay. Now, let's go out and back up and look exactly where this town is on our map. Let's scroll in. There's the town. Look what is around the town. You would normally call this very arid or somewhat dead land. Land that could be very difficult to establish a farm. Now, it does have the benefit of the Orange River that runs very, very close along the borders of this town. Now, if we go all the way out, it's in the North Cape province. You can kind of see it's dead in the center of South Africa. Now, this town was established in 1991. Just a few dozen people, a few dozen like-minded Afrikaners decided to establish this town far and away from all the problems that were occurring within the newly controlled government of South Africa by the ANC, the African National Congress. And I at one point followed very closely the South African military. And in the 80s, the 70s, you could argue that the South African Defense Force of the 1970s, the 1980s, was the most powerful military in all of Africa. They had obtained nuclear weapons. They were a very highly trained, very disciplined armed forces. Now, the ANC took over, and what was more interesting, if you go into the South African website and you look at the transfer of power to certain groups, it was originally the founding members or active leadership of the ANC military wing that took over the South African Defense Forces. And what's interesting, if you go into the bios of these new leaders of the South African Defense Forces, you can see that most of them were trained in former communist countries. All a bunch of communists. And now you can see the result of what happened after the ANC has ruled South Africa for many years. High rates of crime, and the country is essentially dysfunctional. Power outages, roads are not maintained, infrastructure is not maintained, the police forces are highly corrupt, very subjective, courts very subjective, and it has become essentially a land of chaos unless you have large amounts of money and you can afford to live in a gated area with your own private security forces. Now, Orania. So again, a couple dozen people decide, hey, we're gonna create this town that is going to be centered on the Afrikaner culture. Those were the original Dutch-speaking inhabitants of South Africa, the original Orange Free State, the Transvaal. Now let's read what at least Wikipedia has to say about Orania. Orania is a white separatist South African town founded by Afrikaners. We kind of know where Wikipedia sets on the side of things, don't you? It is located along the Orange River in the Karoo region of the Northern Cape province. The town is situated on R369 highway and is 871 kilometers from Cape Town and approximately 680 kilometers or 420 miles from Pretoria. Its climate is semi-arid. The town was founded with the goal of creating a quote-unquote stronghold. That's Wikipedia saying that. That is not the town of Orania saying that. Goal of creating a stronghold for the Afrikaner minority group, the Afrikaans language, and the Afrikaner culture through the creation of an Afrikaner state known as Volksstaat. The town is originally described by outsider observers and scholars as whites only, and as an attempt to revive apartheid. Pause. That is not true. That is simply not true. Although the community denies this, living in the town requires application and acceptance is dependent upon being Afrikaner, demonstrating fluency in Afrikaans, a clean criminal record, and sharing the community's values and goals. Afrikaner Calvinism is an important aspect of local culture. While the South African government has stated that it is opposed to the idea of a whites-only community, it has generally ignored the town. The town's economy is focused on self-sufficiency and is largely based on agriculture, notably pecan nuts. Orania prints its own money-like coupons, which can be used to purchase in its stores, and maintains the last transnational representative council in South Africa. The town has pursued energy independence primarily through solar power, constructed its own sewage works, and has experimented in introducing its own cryptocurrency as a replacement for cash. Two South African presidents have visited the town. Nelson Mandela visited in 1995, and Jacob Zuma in 2010. The town has also received visits from tribal leaders from the Xhosa and Tswana people. The town has grown at an annual population growth that was estimated at 10% in 2019, faster than any other town in South Africa. the population increased by 55% to 2,500 from 2018 to mid-2022, and to 2,800 in July of 2023. In 2023, the town council announced plans for the population to grow to 10,000 as soon as possible. So the fastest growing town in South Africa was created by a few dozen Afrikaners. They went into what is essentially a desert, semi-arid environment and decided to build something. Now, why it's not, by any means, it is not a opulent life. You can clearly see by just going in and looking close at the town. None of these houses have pools. It's a tough agrarian life. But they were able to do this when nothing existed. Let's kind of go up and look at what the area may have looked like prior to the formation. This is probably what it looked like to the left here. So again, as I talked about in one of the last episodes about the creation of South Africa, there was no one here. There was no one in this area when Orania was created. There was nothing here. There was no people. There was nothing. And out of nothing, these hardworking Afrikaans created this town. And it has been thriving. Out of nothing, they create a town that's growing faster than any other town in South Africa. It has essentially zero crime. No crime. Why is that? Why do you think that is? You want to delve in that a little bit? You want to ask why? Well, we probably can't do that, can we? An amazing story. An incredibly amazing story. Out of nothing, a few dozen people, and now you have about 3,000 people in just a couple of decades. And again, this is not like this area was positioned in a part of South Africa in which you would see rapid growth. It was very, very difficult to establish this community, to create the irrigation, to have the agricultural and farming know-how to make a community that can grow its own food, sell its own food, sell agricultural products that can be sold on the open market, in which they could essentially create their own economy that is successful. People are now trying to get into this town because they want to be part of it. So if you build it, they will come. And if you look at the history of South Africa, and this is my big point, okay? This is a microcosm of what occurred throughout South Africa upon its creation. There were no cities. There was no irrigation. There was bush people utilizing feral farming in a sparsely populated land. Once the Afrikaans arrived, they created the cities, the infrastructure. And then again, back to the whole point of if you build it, they will come. And that is what happened. They came. And unfortunately for South Africa, this may not have been done correctly. And now you have what is essentially, in large parts of South Africa, chaos, corruption, crime that is incredibly systemic. And most of this is based off of the inability of the people who run the current country that are incredibly corrupt. Now, why is that? Why do we see that? Well, you be the judge. You comment in the comment section. But again, out of nothing, they built something that is prosperous. Check it out. Orania. Very interesting story. As always, thanks for joining us. Have a good day.